Okay. So we're going to build one for a data space for our FSGA team. This is the team that Josh and I manage. Josh really manages it. But this is in our competitive league where, we're competing with all the other companies. And if we come in and take a look at it, for Canadians, not criticizing Josh and I, but not good. We actually normally do a lot better in this one. So we got to help Josh out here. So the first thing that I like to do is come in and take a look at the settings. And so in football, like you and I were talking about, it's the same format pretty much every single time. And so when you publish any data spaces or you do any comparison or you're providing any advice on Reddit, it's always the same. Where in hockey, there's all these variations. Like depending on the leagues that you're in, pretty much every league that I'm in hockey, I'm in four, they all have different formats and different categories. And everyone's opinion, oh, I don't like defensive stats. I don't like hits and fighting. I only like pure offense. And then other people are like, well, that's too limiting. You don't have enough players. We need to open up the defensive and kind of physicality stats. So you end up with way more kind of variation. So in this particular one, this looks like a head-to-head points league. And so we've got goals, assists, power play points, shots on goal, hits, blocks, and then the goaltender stats are wins, GA, SV, and shutouts. So I'm going to create a new data space on the right-hand side of the screen. We'll call it FSGA Yahoo 24-25. And then I normally, when I name it, just because I have so many leagues that I'm in, I put the actual stats in the name. Blind BLK, win GAA, SVSO. And then because we have this connected to a fantasy league, I already have my Yahoo account connected. If you don't have your Yahoo account, you can connect it. You can connect your account. You can connect it to Fantrax as well. And so what this does once we have it connected, it brings in not only our data feeds data, but then also the data that's available through Yahoo. So first and foremost, we'll start with the available through Yahoo. The data that Yahoo sends us is only related to players that are on our team or other teams. They won't send you any information on anyone that's a free agent. So really the only piece of information that's interesting is the fantasy team. You can pull in some other stuff, you can pull in percent owned, et cetera, but it doesn't have everybody. So the only thing I will say is if you're doing lineup type uh, uh, kind of comparisons, like who you're going to set each week in your lineup or who you're set on each day, sometimes pulling in, what other people are doing with those players can be an interesting data point. It can help you. It's kind of like ADP is a football one. So, well, they have rostered in NFL as well. So I'll pick the Yahoo players and fantasy team. The other thing that's kind of cool about Yahoo that you can do some analysis, you can actually compare your team because we can pull in the standings. So you can pull in the standings, pull in all your players, and then compare them against all the other teams to see, okay, who's at the top, and then compare your team against the teams that are at the top and like compare points and percentage of points. Do they have one or two players that are really, really good that are getting all their points? Or do they have a bunch of really solid players and very few bottom feeders? Like, is the superstar the important part that you want to draft, or is it you just want to make sure the bottom of your draft doesn't suck? So you can do some other stuff in Yahoo, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to literally, get the players into a data space so Josh can start making waiver wire and trade decisions and that type of stuff. So we'll come in and we'll add player stats. So these are only the players for this year. And we'll put in goals, hits, assists, blocks. We don't need giveaways, takeaways. I like time on ice as a key stat to kind of make decisions on. Shots on goal. Do we have pins? We don't. We got hits. Where's we missing here? Blocks. Oh, blocks, hits, goals. Okay, so then we'll do. Actually, we won't put those in there. We're going to create a calculated column from power play goals and power play assists. So I think I've got everything. Okay. So we'll add that in. At this point, it will ask you to join, but I'm actually going to add one more piece of data to it. I'm going to add in player info. So this is essentially a data set that includes all the players that have played in the NHL for the last 10 years. And the reason why I put this in is because it has some information on position, cat, et cetera, and status that we don't get in the here's who played this year, because that's really very much focused on just the stats. The other thing too is you can also, if you're in a keeper league, you're in a dynasty league, you can also add date of birth. So you can kind of see how old people are if you're needing to make decisions on whether you keep them or not. Because I generally keep I value younger players in those leagues. I think most people do. Like dynasty is different, but in keeper leagues. So when we get to this part, we've obviously got to do the join. I'm still going to use the player stats from 2024 as my anchor. So this is going to be the primary source, and then everything is going to be joined based on it. So if we were to pick player info, we would have 7,000 entries into the data space because everything would be joined off all the players that have played in the last 10 years. And a lot of them, they're not going to have any stats for this season. There's only 900 players that play in the NHL in a season. So this limits it to 900 players, but then we get all that additional information. And then we have to create our joins. This before. And I want to join them up with, so this is Yahoo with player info. So that just creates the relationship between the two. And then I want to create another join between player stats on name, player stats. No, that's not right. Player info on name. Okay. So when it's all done properly, you'll notice that there's no empty squares. And it's saying that you've got these two data sets, player stats and players from Yahoo, linked to player info. And this one's going to be your anchor. And that just helps the algorithm then sort the information out so that it's, in computer science land, it's called a join. So we'll click create. And so what it's doing behind the scenes right now is it's going and getting our data, which is fast and quick. And then it's also going to Yahoo and getting all of the league information about the players. So this process for anything where you've got a league involved generally takes a little bit longer just because every time it has to go to Yahoo to get that information.
I've got a great question for you.
Fire away.
What is a save in hockey?
That's a very rudimentary. So a save is shoot the puck, player shoot the puck, goalie makes a save.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't think it was that basic. I thought it was
You
like
thought it was
some
like
I yeah, I thought I thought there was
a
some sort of
pitcher
like
coming
the
in the
goalie
ninth.
can get a save like yeah. Okay. Okay. But I didn't think it was that obvious, but that's
Yeah.
good. Makes
And
sense.
that's why saves are
Yeah,
only
that's why it's only a
worth
point
point
six. Yeah.
0.6. Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
So now that we're in the data space, I'm actually just going to make this a bit bigger. So our live selection, see if I can do this even further over. Now that we're in the data space, we have a couple of things that we need to do to kind of format things. So like my favorite part about this, especially for season long. So the way that I used to do it is in all my leagues, I would have a spreadsheet and I would have a source where I'd go and copy all this data from. And then I would read about all these theories that people would have for managing their teams and, different, single kind of value ranking formulas and blah, 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 blah. I would build out these spreadsheets. And then so anytime that I wanted to go in and do any waiver wire work or evaluate any trades, I'd have to go and copy and get all this data into my template spreadsheet that I'd created at the start of the year. Which when I was younger and didn't have a child and a wife and a job that was quite demanding, that was totally fine because I would probably spend 2 or 3 hours a night doing it. As the number of leagues increased that I was playing in, and then my commitments, I just don't have time for that. So the beauty is you set this up once at the start of the year, or you go and get it from the community from someone else and connect your league with it. Then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So to kind of set it up in the format that I like, this is the same type of things that I would have been doing for in a spreadsheet. Is I want to get the columns in the right order first. So I want to move name and player over. This process is a little bit annoying, but you got to do it the first time. So I'm going to get it over here. I'm going to get the general format. And then I'm going to pin the columns so that they're always on the left-hand side. So I always pin because when you pin them, they always move to the leftmost point. So you got to pin team first, and you got to pin name. So now we've got our columns pinned. I'm actually just going to quickly, so I've got this saved. I'm going to create a view for it. I'm going to call this skaters. I'm going to submit just so that it's always saving under the skaters view at the top. I've got fantasy team next, and then I just want to get all my columns kind of lined up. So we'll do goals, assists. What do we have? Goals, assists, power play. So games played, we want that over here on the left. And if you drag it in between here, it'll actually put them right on the edge. So it's kind of a little hack to get them quickly. Status, I want that over here. Position, position cat. Okay, I think we've got everything we want over here. So these are all good. And then I normally squish them down a little bit so they're not occupying so much real estate. But I can still see them. And then games played. Actually, I want to leave games played the way it is because I find when I start playing with it, if you've got the ones that have min and max where you can do kind of a range of filtering, then it stacks them and then they're too high. So it creates another row. So we'll just leave it like that. I think that works for me. I want to take this over here. Okay, and then I'm just going to save this. Oh, and I drag that over it. Anyways, we'll resize at the end. So position cat, do I need both? Winger, left winger, right winger. I'm actually not going to use position cat. I'm going to hide that. Goals, assists, etc. Okay, so we need power play points. So power play points isn't natively included in the data. So we have to create our first calculated column. And so this is the power. You can create all this derivative data. So I'm going to add PPG to it. It has all the regular operators. If you have any questions of what the operators are, you can kind of look at them here and it gives you some clues as to how you would build out your formulas. And then I'm going to add, no, that's not the right one. I'm going to build out the assists. So one of the things that, if you're building really complex stuff, and this is something that we're looking at building into the tool in the future, is I will often use ChatGPT to write the formulas for me. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But if you want to know what the formula, because this is hard to read, if you want to know what the formula looks like, look at the one at the bottom, because this one's spaced out and easier to read and understand what's actually going on in that particular formula. Already got a PPP column. So we'll just put the full name. And that's perfect. So now we got power play points. We'll move that behind goals and assists. We want shots on goal. And then we want hits, and then we want blocks, and then time on ice. So I like including time on ice as a stat because it kind of gives you like in hockey, it's similar to what we were just talking about, targets and snaps and all that stuff. It gives you an idea of whether that person is getting a lot of ice time, and there's a direct correlation between the more time you're on the ice, the more points you're going to get. So you can often make a decision if you've got a really good points per game player, but they're not getting a lot of time on ice. Well, they might be getting the eye of the coach, and their time on ice will increase, and therefore their points will increase in the future. Or you'll get a a player who has a really good points per game, they're not getting the time on ice per game, then you don't want to pick them up because this is an anomaly. Like this isn't going to continue. They're not getting the opportunities. They're just hot right now. And so it will die off. So you can use that data point to kind of evaluate, who you're picking up or who you're trading. So time on ice uh, per games played is really the one, and I always get this formula wrong. So it's TOA divided by 600, I think, divided by, and you can also just search for them, games played. So you can kind of stay all inside the editor. So that's time on ice divided by 600, because that's seconds. Maybe it's 60 actually. Seconds to minutes, then divided by games played. Yeah, okay, I think that's right. So 14 minutes per game. Let's see who the top guys are. These are all goalies. So I think that is right. And let's just double check this. We'll just get rid of all the goalies. Yes. So Seth Jones, defenseman, John Carlson, these guys are all top. I'm actually surprised we're not seeing Nathan MacKinnon higher. They must be playing him less this year. Last year, Nathan MacKinnon and Mika Rantanen were like 25, 27 minutes per games played. It was like crazy numbers for forward. Connor McDavid was like 28 minutes playing pretty much half a games forward is like insane. Especially for the Oilers because they had such a long cup run. To keep that up for the length of a hockey season, which is a marathon, is insane. So we can see all the different teams. We can see the time on ice, games played. So now we need to kind of create a couple of stats around the scoring system of this particular league. So again, one of the powers of this versus a lot of the other tools that are out there is you can tailor it right to your scoring system. So you have the exact same scoring system in this as you do that your league does. Where a lot of the hockey tools they don't have that ability. You're kind of just banking on it being somewhat similar scoring, and then you have to assume that the overall ranking is somewhat right. So let's go with, let's just call it, um, we'll call it Y points. We'll call it Yahoo points. Give a little bit of branded name. So we'll do bracket goals. Oops, that's not right. Goals times 6. And then we'll do, and I normally do it this way just because I can read it better. Then we'll do assists times 4 plus, this is our power play points, times 2. So one of the other things in hockey, there's a direct correlation to goals and assists to power play points. So often people, when they're looking for players, they look for people who get power play time, power play points, because it means they're probably going to get lots of points and lots of goals. And then they'll look the reverse, like, how effective is a hockey player in terms of helping you win your game. They'll look at your 5-on-5 play. So they'll subtract out your power play points to see how good you are against even competition. And a lot of teams will trade for players, maybe not in fantasy, but in the real life, they'll trade for players based on that. SOG. Is that right? Yeah. Times 0.9. And then, so the value of this behind this identifier here, this just represents the data set. And this can be helpful, like if you start adding the same stats for multiple years. So, if you wanted to see a trend over 3 years, you could add player stats for this year, player stats for last year, player stats for the year before. So to understand which goals is from which season, we added this identifier to make it a bit easier to map it back. Okay. Hits times 0.5 and then blocks times 1. Okay, so that's all of the skater categories. So I don't need to add any of the goalie categories. So we'll click calculate. Hopefully I haven't made any mistakes. And then we've got something not working properly. Let's see what the power play points, where did power play points go? I got Nate McKinnon, that should be fine. So that's calculate and find. So sometimes you do have to do a little bit of troubleshooting to make sure you got it right. So it's going to return a number. Everything looks right.
I don't see any errors.
Why is it? Okay, let's open it up and reload it. Skaters. Oh, I didn't save it. So I just have to add those ones to the bottom. There's something that is not liking the interesting. Why would this be occurring? Two. So this normally happens when you're essentially trying to use a non-numeric value in a formula, or you have an error in the formula itself. So I am intrigued because we checked this. This should have all these have values. Is it these values? Make a difference though. Those are all these zeros. I wonder where that error is. Maybe it's that. Maybe that's the problem. There we go. That was the problem. So we got that's probably I'm gonna make a note of that. It's probably a bug.
Yeah, there we go though.
We gotta trim the white space at the end of you know, okay. So anyways, now we get the value of it. Um, and so let's reorganize these into, what I didn't say before previously. So we'll get games played over here. Oops. Why is that not dragging now? We're finding all the bugs. Don't know why that's not working now. Yeah, I'm gonna reload this.
I already have some immediate questions about the scoring system as well, just because
Yeah,
I'm new to
j
hockey here.
just while I'm doing this, yeah, fire away.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, again, as someone that is unfamiliar with fantasy hockey, interesting that a
Yeah.
shot on goal is 0.9, and then an actual goal is 6. So I guess that's, I don't know what I would comp that to. Like a catch and a touchdown, maybe? Like a catch being 1 point, a touchdown being 6. Like how do you weight this out? Because just from the outsider's point of view, right? Someone that takes a lot of shots has to
Yeah.
be in good positions to score goals, right? So that's a big
Yep.
gap of right, like a shot on goal being not even a full point, and then it trickling into the net being a 6 point. Like that's a big gap.
Yeah. So you have about 30 shots on goal a game. It ranges between 20 and 30, but you normally average a shot every 2 minutes in hockey. And so and there's other shots that don't hit the goal. And so they don't count at all. So there's probably more shot attempts. And the shot attempts is a stat that we have in here. There's more shot attempts. But if you think of it this way, um, you're going to have uh, your top players, let's say your top six, are probably going to have 4 or 5 shots per game. You're going to have your bottom six and maybe your bottom 4 defensemen. They're going to have like 1 or 2 shots a game. They don't get a lot of ice time. They don't get put out in scoring opportunities, and as a result, they don't. So if you're looking at the scoring, you want to make sure that the value of a goalie is generally, in the grand scheme of things, similar to the value of the players. So because the value of a goalie takes all these shots in, the high value guys get a majority of the shots, but then you have a bunch of low value shots that are coming in. So as a result of that, you have a difference between the value in a shot on goal for a player versus the shot on goal versus the saves from the goalie. So then you take the value of a goal versus a shot on goal. In hockey, the average score is 3-2. The winning team scores 3 goals, the losing two scores 2. Some games be higher, sometimes you get shutouts, some of them be lower, but it's essentially a 3-2 league. And so as a result of that, you have 30 shots. You have 3 goals, between 2 and 3 goals. So you really only have about 18 points per side maximum a game that your players can earn from goals. Whereas if you take 0.9, you're going to have 27 points available spread across for shots on goal, spread across your players. And if you take a high producing player who's going to get 4 or 5 shots a game, you're looking at 4 or 5 points just for shots on goal. So that's kind of the relationships. But in some leagues, they don't. It's not 0.9 and 0.6. Like they downgrade in a lot of leagues. Like in one of the leagues I'm in right now, I drafted goalies high because they play a
Right.
lot and they make a lot of saves and they're really good and they're very rare. There's only 30 of them. And they're kind of like quarterbacks in the top 10 are just significantly better than anyone else. So that league is probably needs to update its scoring system so that goalies aren't as valuable because they're so rare.
So I feel like that could comp maybe to baseball in a sense of like pitching used to be so much different than it is now because you used to have guys that would get 20 wins and all this stuff, and now it's like there's very, very few that even pitch
Yep.
deep into the game. So, well, that was going to be where I segue my question because now I'm looking at goalies, right? 5 for a win, 0.6 for a save. I understand they probably rack up a lot of saves, right? Like that can definitely be done. But is there any correlation of like I just want my goalie to be on a good team because I'm going to get this
Yep.
like this 5 point bonus. Like you would rather have the chance to get the 5 point bonus than because what I'm looking at is a save only zero point 0.6, a goal against is -3, right? So like in baseball for daily fantasy, an earned run might be like -3, but a strikeout is 3 points. So if I get a guy, he could give up 5 runs, but if he strikes out 7, 8 batters, really doesn't matter, right? He's made up for for those runs that he's given up with the strikeouts. Whereas in this scoring, at least, if even if this guy's racked up 30 saves, if he gives up 3, 4 goals, I mean, you're kind of just like toasted, right?
You're thinking about it exactly right. And so there's one other element in hockey, and it's kind of the same in baseball, is if you're on a really good team and say you get 30 shots a game, not all shots are equal because they play defense better. They're going to have easier shots, less high danger scoring chances. So one of the things that people often look at when rating goalies is the number of high danger scoring chances they get, which is do they shoot within the cone on the ice? And uh, there's theories on that because some will say, well, oh, goalies that have high save percentage for high danger chances, they are more attractive. I actually have a theory that it's the reverse. You notice the goalies that make all these saves that they shouldn't, but really you want really, really high, low or medium danger scoring save percentages because they don't make mistakes. It's like the pitcher who can throw 110, but when he misses, it's a home run. You don't want that guy. There's a lot of those guys in the MLB.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah.
So, and I'm just gonna quickly do, I guess I could have done that up top. We can cut this out of the video too, but I think there's a bug. We must have released something recently that broke the views because it didn't save the order of the columns, which now it's doing something a little funny. So I don't know, that might be broken. We'll have to get that fixed as soon as possible. It's not affecting any of the existing ones, but I haven't built one from scratch in a little bit since we deployed some of the stuff for data feeds. So anyways, actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do one more thing. I move this over here and get these all look at that there. Okay. I'm actually going to do boom. So here is what at this stage, I'm going to save this before it saves. At this juncture, this is where I would go in and I would start evaluating my team. And I normally use to normalize it, I use points per games played. No, I don't use points for the whole season. Now, if you use points for games played, you have to weed out the guys who haven't played a number of games. So I normally put a GP games played kind of minimum. They have to have played at least 5 games. And then you see the list, and then you see these are all the suspected high flyers. If we come in and look at our team, now we can kind of get a single view of who's most performant. And so for us, we really should be looking at these bottom guys and putting bids in the auction to replace them because, Trevor Moore is really not the right guy. One of the other calculations that we could build out here is we could put kind of like above replacement. So we can come in here and we can say, let's do Y points minus the mean of all players Y points per game. So if I calculate this and I come and look on this side over here, it should sort the same way, but starts to tell you that Trevor Moore, if you take all of the 600 NHLers that are probably played at this point, Trevor Moore is only 0.23 points above per game above the average. And you definitely need guys that are performing better than that. And if we go and we look at that group of individuals, so one of the strengths of this is we can now, because, before, remember I mentioned Yahoo doesn't provide you with all the data, but we have all the data. We can look at all the guys that map back to teams that don't map back to a team, where we have data and data feeds, but they don't map back to a fantasy team. So if I come in and take a look at these guys, they're 4 points above replacement, and they're averaging, you know, pretty good time on ice. Like Sean Monahan, he's on the like Russian line. Sean Monahoff is what they've been calling him. This is Johnny Gaudreau's like best friend, unfortunately, and he actually went to Columbus to play with Gaudreau before he passed away. He might be a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets have been kind of a wagon, haven't they? Like
They've been
relative
pretty
to kind of
good.
what the expectations were, I guess.
Yeah, well, especially losing like
Yeah,
like
right.
their
Pretty close to when the
superstar
season started. Yeah.
and like the emotional impact that people thought it would
Yeah.
have on the team, which obviously it did. There's no doubt about it. But have they played harder because of it? Quite possibly. Like if you look at the constructs of their team, they're really not that bad. They've had a lot of stable, good drafting for a long time. Um, they have a decent goalie, which is important. They're not injured, which they've had a lot of like Zach Werenski's had a number of injuries, and he's one of their best defensemen. So, it kind of makes sense. It's just surprising because they've been so bad for so long. So anyways, you kind of get the idea here now. Josh can come in and he can, start to look at this and say, okay, well, who are the types of guys that we want to pick up to replace? Well, we probably want to go in here and we probably want to replace Trevor Moore. Chychrun's injured. Brady Shea, Adam Fox this is surprising because Adam Fox is one of the top defensemen in the league. And so for him to kind of not be producing
Yeah,
as
that was one of the
expected,
few names I knew, and I was wondering why he was so far down this list.
just has not had a great start to the season. 0 goals, 9 assists, 11 games. It's not terrible, but hasn't scored, isn't.
hmm Yeah, that's 6 points for a goal is huge. Like if he even had like
Yeah,
two of those.
it would make a big difference. He'd be a whole point per game higher
hmm
um, above his replacement. So the and like to have Marty Nakash as your top guy is not great. Um, he's kind of a lower end. Like he's a great player, and he should be a big part of Carolina going forward. Uh, like funny story about him, his like dad posted all this stuff in the media about how good his son was, and like nearly spoiled the whole his signing last summer because of it. Because they were like, well, we don't want to deal with this guy and his dad. And then eventually they just got the deal done, and I actually thought he was going to get traded to Calgary. They were going to get rid of him. Um, so yeah, we've got some work to do on this team. Like you got Connor McDavid, he's injured right now and hasn't had a good start to the season. He'll come back, but other than that,
What's the
Ehlers
story
and
with the Oilers? Like, is this just hangover because of what they had to endure last year? Like, because I know they have been struggling, I guess, relative to expectations.
yeah. So the thing about the Oilers is kind of twofold. Number one, they are a top heavy team. They have two of the best players, arguably the two best players in the world. You could debate that, but they have like two of the best players in the top 10. And so they're extremely dependent on how well they're playing. And I think at the start of the season, those two guys aren't particularly engaged until it starts meaning something. And then number two is because they don't have a lot of depth. I think they get tired, and when you don't have those two guys going, you're not gonna perform well because they don't have depth. They don't have other guys to kind of fill in and replace. So
Right. Okay.
their team is also pretty old. Like they went and kind of filled it with a whole bunch of veterans. So I think the start of the season is just it doesn't have the same level of excitement, and I think they kind of feel now that they're oh we're figured out. Last year they started like something brutal like 0 and 10. It
Yeah, I
wasn't
remember
that
they
bad.
they started slow and then came on, so I was assuming that was going to be
Yeah,
the same situation.
it will be, and they've already started to turn it around, even with McDavid being hurt. Um, so they're just a slow start team. Because of the kind of top heavy nature of their team. Like again, like I said last year, like McDavid was at like 28 points, 28 minutes a game. So they're obviously trying to save him a bit and save his
Hmm.
legs and um, trying to get other guys to play a bit more. That's probably affecting it.
Yeah. We can comp them to the Cincinnati Bengals, same situation. Start like
Yeah,
trash the first month of the season.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, the only thing I would argue with the Bengals have good players. The Oilers have like superstars.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah, they don't have like yeah, I don't know. I mean, Burrow's up there, but yeah, I mean, they don't have like the best player in the league or anything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then we would do the same thing. I'll do it afterwards for Josh. But then we would do the same thing for goalies. So we would build out the same kind of goalie stats. And then I'll publish this to the community marketplace so other people can go and use it if they're in similar leagues. I don't know if these are the out of the box stats from Yahoo for this particular format or if they've been tweaked or not. Um, but regardless, if someone wants to use this, they can clone it to there and then they can go in and modify it, improve it, come in and edit uh oops. They can come in and edit the Y points to whatever the weighting is for their league. And then everything will work. They just have to refresh it and it's good to go. So, and it's funny, like, talking about, I'm obviously biased, but, in most of my leagues now, I'm in 8 leagues right now for football, for hockey, four including this one where Josh is kind of managing, so more like 7. And there's no way I would be able to be competitive in 7 leagues without this.
Yeah.
And I literally just come in and refresh and then make decisions. Look at my lineup, set my lineup for the week. If I need to pick up waiver wires or make a trade, refresh. Maybe I'll show you one other thing that I find also that quite valuable with the tool that other people might find valuable. So I'll come in. Let's look at Trevor Moore. Actually, let's do this. Our matchup this week. We'll do that as a better example. We lose on the. So we are playing Fantrax, the other integration partner that we have.
How
So if we
fitting.
come in and we look at Fantrax, Brandon from Fantrax, and we pick our team, we can literally compare the two teams together and see how we're going to do this week. So I was trash talking Nakash, and he's the
Yeah, this
top
guy's
player
a
on both
wagon.
teams. Yeah. Ignore what I said earlier about his dad. Um, but he's obviously at the top, which is also crazy that Ovechkin's here. Um, 8 goals, 8 assists. The guy's like 106 years old. I actually
Just
I
gets
thought
it done.
there's no way, that Gretzky that he's going to catch Gretzky, but now I think it's genuinely possible.
How close
So
is he to that? I had no idea that that was even a thing.
I think he's like 40 goals away now. So he
Wow.
probably won't get it done this year. Um, but if he'll probably play another season because of it. He'll play until he beats it.
That's insane.
And
I didn't even know he was like close.
yeah, he scored a lot of goals. If there was no lockouts, he probably would have caught him. and they played in different eras. Now, let's be clear though. It's funny. So Lauren and I went and saw. We've seen Ovechkin play a few times. Lauren's like, we were in Scottsdale, and she's like, "Oh, I want to see Ovechkin. We'll get some good seats, and we'll see him kind of up close and personal. This is kind of later in his career. Don't know how many chances. He was literally the most disappointing player to see live. He sauntered out the ice, hardly skated, and then would just like float back to the bench and get off. Now the power play would come. He would get out on the power play, stand on the left flank. He's a right shot, and then they would just move the puck around, and then eventually they'd get him the puck, and he would rip a one timer, which is how he scores all these goals, like Brett Hull back in the day. But he, at this stage in his career, is not an enjoyable player to watch. He's not aged well. If you watch Sidney Crosby, you're like, this guy's still an athlete. Like this guy's still getting it done. Ovechkin is literally chasing a record at this point.
I see. I can't knock him for it, but I see.
Yeah, hey, like it's a war of attrition. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up playing with Danny Heatley, and when Danny Heatley's years were done, his body failed him. Like he rolled over the 29 to 30 threshold, which is one of those ones in hockey where guys start slowing down, and it affects everybody differently. But he just couldn't do it anymore. Great hockey player before that, but all of a sudden you're just literally a half second too slow and the game's too fast.
Yeah, that happens to quarterbacks all the time. Like
Oh,
it's like
100%.
like literally a quarter of a second off and you can't do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Or even like I always think of RG3. Literally that one hit blew out his knee and then he was just slightly slower and he couldn't move as well and he was done.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, back to this, like coming and taking a look at it, we have we can compare the two teams. If we look at it, we're in tough this week. We have one player at the top,
He's got
and then
much more
they,
depth than you in
yeah,
terms of just over top and bottom, right?
yeah, yeah, and to be honest, it's going to be a tough year for us.
Hey, it's still early. It's only November 7th. We've got time to
It
make
is.
some moves here.
We do have time to make some moves, and we can pick up some of the guys that's one of the beauties of hockey. It's similar to baseball in that if a guy, is a high performing, high potential rookie, he may not get a ton of ice time at the start of the year, but at the end of the year, he can be heavily relied on. So one year in my keeper league, I got Jason Robertson from that exact. He played the whole season. He did nothing in the first half. In the second half, he shot the lights out. And so using points per game, I was able to identify that he was rising very quickly in points per game. He sat a lot in the first half of the year. He's a healthy scratch a bunch. So you could really see him kind of rise up the points per game. So we could definitely do that. One of the things that, back to my point earlier about, well, what wins? Is it having some of those really high end guys, or is it having a limited number of guys at the bottom? Like we've got a tale of two problems here. We've got a bunch of guys at the bottom compared to this team, and we're lacking a bunch of guys at the top too. Most of our guys are right in the middle. So we need guys like Adam Fox to play better, and we have to replace Trevor Moore, Chychrun probably. So even if we come in and this will be the last thing we look at, it's not what I wanted to do. Let's go in and let's look at Chychrun. So those are our defensemen. If we look at the defensemen that haven't been claimed, Vince Dunn, I think he's injured. Um, but Caden Gooley for Montreal, he wouldn't be. He's fairly young, wouldn't be a bad pick. Matt Roy, probably not. There's actually not a lot of defensemen here because then we're getting into the bottom. So we could definitely get an improvement on Chychrun. Although it is a little bit of slim pickings. Sean Dursey might be a good guy to pick up when he gets back because he's probably actually uh, worth more than his 6 points per game. But we would probably want to go pick up Caden Gooley. He's young. He's probably an improvement on Chychrun or we don't want to get Brady Shea. Nashville has not been the team that they thought they were going to be to start. They'll probably pick it up. Um, so we'd probably want to do that, make an improvement, or we want to go and find a guy across all the teams. Let's look at all the defensemen that maybe we want to trade Chychrun for with someone who's hoping that maybe he'll start playing better. So, find a trade Digger for Dougie Hamilton if he thinks that Chychrun's going to be. So, and then the beauty of it is that you can come in here and you can say, okay, well, let's see if we want to do a deal with Digger.
I feel like Digger is someone we can negotiate a trade with. He seems like a reasonable fella that we could hammer out a deal with. Some of these people, I'm sure, are hard to
Yeah,
trade with if it's anything like football.
it is. Yeah. Well, especially in the FSGA expert leagues, I find it's really even hard to get people to respond.
It should be the opposite. There should be a hyperactive league.
I agree, but there's no trades in any of the leagues. Like in baseball, I think there was one trade all year in our division.
Maybe people are just so firm on their takes that
Yeah.
they don't want to, I guess.
Yeah. The other thing too is these leagues are so competitive and they have so many teams in them that there's just not a lot of player wiggle room. So if you make a mistake on a deal, it's not like you can just pick someone up on the waiver wire to recover from that mistake, which I think what kills baseball. The teams are so huge, and you have so many fantasy teams in it. Like if you don't draft well in that league, you're toast. You're not winning. There's no
Yeah,
chance. You can't
yeah.
trade your way or waiver wire out of it. But yeah, Digger, we could do a deal. We could probably do a deal with Digger. Like we could probably get, you know, I think we might even be able to like loosen up a Charlie McAvoy for a Chychrun out of him. And, McAvoy probably isn't going to be at the bottom of the pile for the whole season. He's one of the top defensemen in the league. Throw in maybe a mid forward 2-for-1 deal for him. So, but you kind of see how you can use the tool to make some decisions. One of the other things that I like to do is we'll just do all the, this is the power. This is what you can't do in Yahoo. Um, is let's say we want all players that play more than 18 minutes. And so you can filter on that. Or you can say, actually, let's do it the reverse. Let's do it the reverse. Let's do points per game. Let's say we want everyone that's got above 6 points per game. And this is better than what Chychrun was doing anyways. So then we want time on ice. Yeah, so we start to find guys that maybe underperforming based on their time played. So if we look at again, Caden Gooley, pretty good option because he's at 22 minutes per game. He's above the points per game that we're looking for. So he's getting the chances. He's not just an anomaly. Like they're playing him in Montreal. Damon Severson, who's not a sexy pick because he plays in Columbus and he's like a super reliable defenseman. He's not flashy. He's not a bad guy. I like Sean Dursey. He's injured right now, but Sean Dursey's a good option. So you can kind of start using the filtering and the sorting to get some ideas of who might be good players. One of the other things we didn't add it in this one is we have depth chart data. So you can come in and you can take a look. Well, where do these guys sit in the depth chart? So Sean Jersey gets hurt, it's similar to football. Who's going to take his spot on the power play? Who's the next guy up? And so you can get an idea of that depth chart, and you can use that to find sometimes some wins or some rising players.